Show, where we curiously connect teachers and seekers in a safe space, exploring a vast array of topics that spark the flame of curiosity within you. We've created a community for thoughtful discussions where teachers share their wisdom and seekers explore the depths of their curiosity. It's a space where diverse perspectives come together, fostering connection and understanding. Our intention is simple: to ignite your curiosity and create a life that totally lights you up. Hello, everybody. It is Kelly. I'm back. Being Curious Show. Hello. We are, today we get to talk about dogs. And Elizabeth Ann Johnson is an author, and her book is launching today. And I just received it this morning, and I can't find it. So I would normally have it up to show everybody. So I'm super excited to have her on the show. She is a author. Well, she has a book, so she's definitely an author. She's an animal healer and mentor. And before we started, as we were doing our pre-show interview, she started to tell me about her connection with animals. And I actually had to say, stop. I want to get this on air because it's just such a beautiful story. So without further ado, welcome Elizabeth Ann Johnson to the stage. How are you?
Great, doing great. Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on your book launch today.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
How long did this take to come to and birth?
Oh gosh, it sort of came into birth. Well, not birth, but inception, I guess. So long ago, when I was treating animals with the five element theory and sharing things with the owners about their animals. And the next day they would come in, or excuse me, the next treatment they would come in and they'd go, I now understand my husband. And so they were actually taking things like, if I said their horse or their dog was a wood element, they would take it home and they'd start kind of chewing on that and seeing some of the same behaviors and the personality traits and the stressors and the stress responders and the wants and the needs and all the things I try to describe to them for support for their animals. And they would see it in a human. And sometimes it was Aunt Mary and sometimes it was a coworker. And that went on for years and years and years. And I was fascinated by it because I thought, wow, the animals and I are pairing up here, and we're going to help humans have this five element lens, which fosters understanding and often acceptance of behaviors and things. So you're not that, you're not roiling around inside like, why do they do what that? Why do they do what they do? And that's the curious part. Is that was my question early on. Why do they do what they do? And the five element provided me that, and then provided, literally thousands of people and thousands I've treated in 35 years for treated their animals. So it's provided them that lens too. And then everybody started saying, well, when are you going to write the book? And so I finally wrote the book. So
Do you have a book on you?
I
You have one close
do.
by?
I do. Do you want me to
Let's show
show?
everybody the cover. Isn't
It's a
it
cute little
beautiful?
beagle.
It is a cute
My
little beagle.
publisher chose the beagle, and he's grown on me. He's actually pretty adorable. And so, yeah. And the book's pretty fun. It's got quizzes in it so you can find your dog's element. It's got acupoints. It's got lots of good stories. And it also has, the second section is about humans. And so you can find your own element. And then we weave into relationship from there. And what do these relationships mean? What element gets along with another element? What element is going to have to do some major give and take, and, things like that. So it's actually really a fun book. And I've just had rave reviews over the people that have read it. And, so it's fun. Yeah.
So the name of the book is Know Your Dog's True Nature, and you can get it anywhere. So you can get it on Amazon, of course, but go to your local bookstore. Go support the small guys too, because it'll definitely be there. Okay, yeah. So the it is understanding canine personality through the five elements. So let's talk about the five elements.
Okay, the five elements are part of an ancient healing structure in traditional Chinese medicine. It's actually really classical Chinese medicine, but for the purpose of the book, because everyone knows TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is much more common in anything you read. We left it at TCM, but it's actually older than TCM is just by a little bit. And so that's one caveat. I always like to say, in case we have an acupuncturist or somebody that really knows it, knowing that we know it, but we
Right.
had to do that for public. And so it's this big healing structure that was designed over 5,000 years ago, and it's got all the moving parts of nature in it, basically, and that's applied to each element archetype. And what I did with this was with the book was I plucked out the personality part, which I always felt was the fun part, and the part that actually could be beneficial and resonate out into the world for people to start to understand each other as well as their animals. The animals are like our training wheels, for this.
Absolutely.
And so you get to know your animals, you get to know the elements, and you start working with the support mechanisms, you create the understanding, and then you go and you look at your husband or your partner or your wife or your coworker quietly. I always tell people, do that quietly at first so you don't offend anyone, but
Right.
figure out who they are and figure out who you are, and then start to see the world through that 5 element lens, because it really does help a lot. It helps you in understanding and just relaxing into, well, okay, they need to have a purpose, and I want to go have fun, but they want to have a purpose, so I have to respect that. So yeah, it's really kind of a global entreaty to, helping us understand each other as humans as well as our animals. So
Oh, absolutely. Well, my dogs just showed up. They burst through the door, and I now have my English bulldog right here, who is just
oh,
absolutely like wanting to be on the show.
nice. What's his name?
His name is Diesel.
Oh, hi,
Yeah,
Diesel.
he
Hi,
gets it. I'd
Diesel.
move the camera if I could to show everybody Diesel. And then I have Baloo, my 14-year-old,
Oh,
that he's here as well. So let's. I mean, my dogs are here. Tell just flow. How do you work? How does this work? I
yeah.
have
So
two that are just sitting here
they're
waiting
waiting
to
to
play
hear.
with you. Yeah,
Who am I? That's what they're saying. They're curious. Who am I? Anyway.
absolutely.
Okay, so we'll run through the
Here, we'll do
element.
this for the bulldog because this is what he's now
Oh,
done.
hi. I can see his freckles.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so we'll just run through the elements as quickly as I can. So as I said, it's all about nature. So there's a seasonal aspect to it. So and what I want everyone to think about when I'm talking about this is that what is the element in nature actually like? What is the constitution of that when it's in nature? And then apply that to the animals and or yourself.
Okay.
so so wood is a spring element, and these dogs are full of potential. So you think about spring, everything's busting out, burgeoning out of the ground. The leaves are all springing out. There's so much potential in the air, and that's how these dogs are. They like to be working dogs. Movement is their medicine. So nature is always changing. It's ever changing.
Right.
It's transforming itself constantly. And these animals like to do that too, to some degree. They like to move. They need that. They're very athletic, so they need that. They like challenges. They are highly intelligent. They often become police dogs or military dogs, protection dogs.
They're
Um,
always working. They're always
they're
moving.
always,
They're like,
yeah, they're
yeah.
always wanting to work. They can turn it off, but many can't. And I write about that in the chapter about the wood element. and and what they how we find the element, the primary thing is through a stress response. What is the stress response of the animal? It's the
Okay.
easiest way to do that besides the quizzes, which are
Right.
really, really helpful. So the stress response that the wood element shows is in humans words it would be anger, but dogs don't get angry. They get impatient, they get frustrated, they have aggression, and they get overprotectiveness, and then
Right.
have aggression, with that. So these wood animals can show that. And when you see that, if some stress came up, then you've got a wood animal there. So that's the wood.
Okay.
The one thing I want to throw in there, because I know we all do a lot with herbal medicine, probably people that listen to this show. One thing I discovered early on when I was doing a lot of herbal medicine with the animals, and making all my own brews and everything before there were online herbal products all over the place.
I'm sorry. The bulldog's coming up on the chair with me.
Oh,
He
but,
really,
oh,
he's ready to go. Like,
oh,
right.
he's so cute.
I'm sorry. Keep talking.
That's okay. That's great. We wanted a fun show, didn't we?
We did what? We got a
Hi,
good show.
hey, Diesel. He's handsome. What a
Well,
cutie.
we'll find out what he is. I don't know if he's a wood element.
Okay, I don't. I probably not, but he's being a little pushy there, so that's
He's
kind
being
of
very
good. Yeah,
pushy,
yeah,
right?
in a good way.
In a good
Um,
way.
so what I discovered was the wood element dogs were getting better faster with herbs than some of the other animals were, and I
Right.
watched this for numerous years. And I think the whole situation is that there's a synergy between the potential for herbs in the springtime and the potential for these dogs in the springtime, these wood element dogs. So there was this cool synergy that I picked up on, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Spring and spring, they're just matched. These dogs get better fast. So that's the wood element. And next is the fire element. And the fire element is a summer dog. And fire has a lot of heat inside of it, right? One of their stressors is heat. Because so we need to keep these dogs cool. That's a support mechanism for them. But these dogs are really interesting in that they're super social. They love everybody, and they have what I call charismatic magnetism, which
Mm,
I made up a long time ago
I love
because,
that.
well, everybody's drawn to them. Like, they sprinkle joy and goodness all over the place, and happiness. They're the ones that see you across a parking lot, and they wiggle, 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 and they're like, "Hi," and
Are they
you
okay? Are we on fire?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was like, I think my bulldog's a fire.
Yeah, it could be. Everyone
Yeah.
loves them. They have fan clubs, like,
Yep.
people know them, and they need to be adored, and we call them, like, the party animal or the diva, because they
Yep.
just wanna be social all the time, and it's
Right.
a need, actual need for them,
Right.
and it can create behaviors if they don't get that.
Right.
They're very bonded with their humans, and they like to be with them all the time, so there's separation anxiety dogs sometimes, so that's part of their sort of constitution, is they can get that way. They get very stressed, and they get this funny thing called excess joy, which creates, this is Chinese medicine talk, excess joy, and it creates a disturbance of the shen. And the Shen is the mind and the spirit and the body. And so basically what that means is it's a panic attack. So they're having so much fun, like they're at a dog park and there's a bunch of dogs and they're just having so much fun. And then suddenly they get too much fun and they start to panic and they start to nip at everybody, and the heads up in the air and the tails go doing this in the back. And the best thing we can do then is ground ourselves, major grounding, feel the feet on the ground, take a breath, feet on the ground, and go in and grab this helium balloon that you have now of an animal and pull them out of the fray gently, and be really soft and quiet with them, just quiet touch. And I want to show everybody, if they have a fire dog, a point that's really easy that cools all that heart fire that comes from the excess joy. And it's right here, right between our eyebrows,
Okay.
and it's called yin tong. And it's a wonderful point, and basically you just go in and you just start softly rubbing this nose top to forehead, nose top to forehead, and you just work on that point, and the dogs usually go ho ho ho, and they cool down. And when I was saying that in nature, I want you to think about the element in nature. So fire warms us, right? And it cooks our food, and from ancient times, it's been a friend. But it also turns into a forest fire, right? And it burns down structures and it does crazy things. And that's that emotional span of the fire dog that people see, and they don't know what to do with. So these are all missing links that help people manage these animals when they do get imbalanced like that. So the next dog is an earth element, and that's late summer. And they're the nurturers or the caregivers. He wants to talk to me. That's all right. My dog does that too. They're the nurturers or the caregivers, and they're the kid-loving dogs. They're kind of usually like the overweight labs that love everybody and let the burglar in through the window and invite them in. And they're just pardon me. They're really they're really loving dogs. They're very routine based. And they're the ones that are going, Mom, it's 2 minutes to 5 dinner time. They know exactly when they need to eat because they're very much a foodie. And so they can get really overweight very, very fast. And they have great tricks to get us to give them treats, and more treats and more treats. And they just have this, hi, can I please have one? Kind of like, and it's so easy to give in because they're such sweet, loving dogs. They are like Earth because they are an Earth dog, and they are in Earth has this long memory, right? It has this huge memory, and we're always unearthing like archaeological digs and all these things and finding all this memory stored in Earth. And that's how these dogs are. They're not fast learners, but you can give them a request. You try to teach it to them and you don't think they got it. And then 3 years later, you use that request on them or another dog next to them and they do it. So they have this long, long memory, and a lot of times people really resonate with that because, all of a sudden their dog is doing what you asked him to do 3 years ago that he wouldn't do. They can be stubborn a little bit about that sort of stuff when they're imbalanced. So really diet considerations are massive. Enzymes for them are huge. Uh, that's really important because their organs associated with Chinese medicine are digestive organs, and they slow down their metabolism and then they start to gain weight. So that's kind of a bit about the earth dog. The next dog is an autumn dog, and that's the metal dog. And these metal dogs, we call them the librarian. They're really purposeful, and they don't really want a lot of touch. They don't want sentimentality. They just want a job and they want purpose. And they're kind of the dogs you walk up to somebody and you're talking to them and you think you're going to be able to pet their dog, and that dog, if you look down or you make eye contact or you go to pet them or anything or say hi to them, they turn their head away because they don't really want to engage a lot. They just want to have a job. So these animals, and they're highly, highly, highly intelligent. These animals have issues when they don't have a job. They have um, really sometimes like a separation anxiety from a job. So they grieve, and that's their stress response is grieving. So we have to kind of tend to these dogs in a different way, putting them in like nose work or giving them some toys like they're out, the games that are out nowadays, or just keeping them busy thinking they're working is really important for those guys. And I didn't mention, I'm going to back up just for a second, Kelly.
Okay.
The earth elements stress response is worry. So those dogs worry. that's, and you can see it in their eye. They're worry, 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 and so they'll pant a lot, or they'll do some motion that's weaving or something like that, and so that's worry. So we did the metal. So the last one is my favorite, and that's the water element.
Water. Yep.
Yeah, and the water element is like this little mystical being. It's just an amazing animal, super sensitive. I mean, highly, highly sensitive. Its sense organ is hearing. And I always say that they don't just hear sounds in their environment, they hear generations of all sorts of things. They walk in other worlds. And they listen in other worlds. And so their goal in their life is to be invested in us learning more about ourselves and evolving. And so
Wow.
they're really deep connected animals, and they know what we're thinking before we ever know what we're thinking. And dogs always know our feelings and they sense them. But if these dogs just are like a pool of reflection where you see them look at you like an alien because you're not being honest in your emotions at that moment. You're singing in the kitchen and you had a really lousy morning and the dog looks at you like, you know hey, that's not you, like figure it out, deal with your issue and move on, and then sing. So they really are, they're great partners to have. The sad thing about them is, a lot of them had really early trauma, and
Mm,
same with water element people. And so the karmic lesson that they came into this world with is visceral fear. And so they're living it again, and they're learning how to deal with it. And so we have to learn how to deal with their visceral fear. Some of these water animals show absolutely no fear until they hear a really loud noise because their sense organ is hearing, like a backfire, a close firework, or it's hunting season and somebody shoots a gun just right outside your property. And those animals will just take off running, and they go into this sympathetic dominant situation where they can't hear you anymore. And I actually had that happen with me with a dog that I had for 10 years. Best dog I have ever had, and I've had a lot of dogs. And she was my heart dog. We all have one really big heart dog.
yeah.
And she did all sorts of biology work with me out in the field, always off leash, perfect recall, right by my side, like 24 hours a day for 10 years. And at 10 years, sorry for this long story, but we were sailing on a tall ship that I was crew on, and she was crew too. And the cannon went off and she was asleep, and it reverberated down below. And we were pulling into a port, and she jumped off the ship, which she'd never done before, cleared it over onto a dock, and then started running down the middle of San Diego. So through traffic lights and stuff. And I was just, and of course I'm going after her. And finally some man saw what was happening, and he kind of blocked her, and he was a kind of a big guy, and he just scooped her up and held her for me. But having this extremely close relationship with a dog like that, and then having it backfire, and she was a water element. So that's the one thing we really need to look for with the water elements is really, being a really solid handler, which I felt like at the time I was. But when there's loud noises and things like that, they really can react radically. And so have them in your field, and make your fields as strong as you can, and keep them on a leash if something like that's happening, even if you normally have them off leash and they have a good recall. So that's the one sad part. But these animals are brilliant, they're smart, they're funny. Water element people are visionaries, they're like expansive and everything. My little water element I have now, Pretzel, is she at 9 o'clock every night, she asks me to play my flute and she sings with me. So she's turned her hearing into this amazing prowess of being able to hit all the stair steps on my flute. And she needs that every night. Like it's a need for her. Like she has to have that to go to sleep. And sometimes I'm pretty tired. I'm like, oh, Press, do I have to play? And she's, sitting there just in ready to go. And sure enough, she just goes at it with me. So they're really fun to have. I never want people to think they're not, but there is that caveat of the visceral fear, that really strong fear with them. So that's kind of everybody in a nutshell. Oh, and water, I didn't say this, sorry. Water, so metal, I'm going to back up 2 sections. I apologize, Kelly. Um, Metal in nature is not flexible, so those metal elements aren't very flexible sometimes with things either. And yet they're metal is so purposeful, right? We build buildings with it, we make cars with it, we do all these things. So if you can think about those tenets in nature, you can often kind of remind yourself what that is. Yeah. And the water element, water elements are shapeshifters too. And that I love talking about this because when we think about water in nature, there are there's so many ways water can take shape. So there's ice, there's snow, there's salt water, fresh water, quiet pools, tsunamis, mist, rain, it goes on and on and on. And so that's these dogs too. They will often change their element around. So that's how you often know you have a water dog, is if it's shape-shifting into a wood dog and a metal dog or an earth dog or a fire dog. You're going, what is its dog anyway? Then you have a water dog when you do that. Except with puppies. Puppies try things out for usually about 6 months. They try to figure out who they are, and then they seat their element in.
So if you were going to look for a dog, this just popped in. Can you use your book and your tools of actually looking for either a puppy or a rescue dog or anything like that?
Well, you can, and one of the things we're trying to do is infiltrate this into the rescue system, so that when an animal is either surrendered or maybe a feral dog captured, what's their stress response? We label that right away, and then we can bring them into the system with a primary element, and we know what their wants and needs and stressors are, and then the kennel staff can work with that. And then when we rehome them, it's like a matchmaking experience. We find the right home for them, for their needs primarily. And I was at Humane Society Expo just a few months ago and had a lot of meetings and roundtable discussions with that. So it's something we're trying to infiltrate in, because I really truly believe that less dogs will be put back in the system if the owners have this information and can work with it, because it's so indicative of who that dog is, what their needs are, what their wants are, and how to support them. So in answer to your question, yes, you could do that. You could look for one, but you've got to read up on them and practice a little bit to get to know all, the things that you want and need and what fits in your life. So if let's say you're a 75-year-old person and you're kind of sedentary and you want a wood dog, that's not really going to be good, because a wood dog needs movement, right? And if it doesn't get
Right.
movement, then it gets protective and aggressive. And so not necessarily with the owner, but probably more protective. So it's sort of like trying to do a justice by the animal to learn what they are and accept what they are, and then work with what they are, as opposed to trying to find one that's the right one. However, in the situation that I just told you, that would be a good way to go about it. They would say, oh, well, maybe I need a fire dog. I'm just going to walk up and down the street a couple times. I don't go out a lot, and I want somebody who's kind of fun, that I can still play and teach tricks to. Fire dogs love to learn tricks. And and or an earth dog who's kind of slow and kind of, just really watching that person all the time, being the caregiver, being the nurturer. And water elements would probably fit with them too because their exposure levels are going to be less. So, but wood dogs and metal dogs could be okay, but they're not going to be touchy feely. They're not the one that's, going to cuddle on the couch too much with you.
Do they go? Does it trend with breeds? Like, or because I feel like that's kind of limiting because I mean that's like saying that all redheaded people are the same, like right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
But is there any kind of like vague guideline?
Not really. What we see is we look at, so from my lens, I look at the animals themselves, and then I can go, oh well, maybe more German shepherds, Rottweilers, and Belgian Malinois are wood elements because they are. But that doesn't mean all of the
Right.
Rottweilers are. So it's a fuzzy line with that. We see a lot of terriers are metal dogs. It's interesting, and they're just, that's their constitution, to be busy and to work and have a purpose in life. We do see more red fire dogs, but the problem is in the dog breeding world, it's so, everything's crossed and so many breed types are crossed, and then also so many breeds are changed for color. So they're bred for color. So
Right.
that dilutes the whole system on that end. Now, if you're in the horse world and you're talking about horses, we can almost always pigeonhole the primary element of like a red chestnut horse as a fire horse, and then we learn their behaviors and we go, oh yeah, this is a fire horse. Oh no, this is an earth horse with a secondary fire, because we all have five elements, and it's just a percentage game at that point,
Right.
yeah. And the primary element is the one where you see the stress response strongest. They might do a secondary stress response, but it's not as often. But the primary one is the one that really is the one we think as indicative of the element. Does that make sense? So
Totally.
yeah, yeah. So, and reading the book, when what happens with people, or in interviews I've been on, just like you did, they go, "Oh, Earth," or "Oh, I've got this dog sitting here, and this guy's a." I had one. Ness Jones. She's in Australia, and I did an interview with her a while back. And she had five Belgian Malinois around her. And so she had, by the end of our talk, she had pegged every one of them of who they were, and they were all different elements, which was really kind of cool. So, yeah. So,
Yeah, I think my actually I had to go while you were talking and get the bulldog out of the room because he was so like and it's funny because I do interviews all the time. He's never busted through the door and tried to get into a chair. Like
yeah.
it like pushed me out of the chair during an interview. I think he's a fire. I might be wrong, but I think he's a fire. And then my other dog, who's peacefully just sitting 5 feet away, I think he's an earth dog.
Good, good. Well, read the book, and then you'll
Absolutely. I'm
know for
so
sure.
excited to do that.
Yeah, and make sure you look up the human part too, and just, figure out the rest of your world. So
Oh gosh, everything's tied together. Oh gosh, everything's tied together. Well, what else? What other type of invitation would you want to give the audience to read the book?
because we're talking about being curious, be curious. And I think it's just such a perfect match, the word curious, with this book, because people are looking for that missing link about who is their dog,
Yeah,
who is their dog, and why do they do what they do. And I have heard that question a bazillion times, and I hear it all the time still. And I think if you want to bring in another form of recognition for some of those needs and wants and these archetypal behaviors, this is a really good one because it's fun, it's interesting, and it works for humans too. So, and it's regardless of breed type or color. It's non-discretionary like that. It can be related to those, but we don't pigeonhole those either into it. So I
If
really
you're
think,
trying to know your dog better,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
What about using this as a tool of introducing a new dog to the family?
Yeah, that's a really good thing to talk about real quick. I think, learning the dog's true nature, its archetypal element, knowing your dog that's already there, and then bringing a new dog in is there's a challenge there, and what you need to do is just honor each one's wants and needs and see how that works. I have right now, I have Wilbur, who's an earth element dog, and I have Pretzel, who's a water dog. And Pretzel had come from born under a drug house. Her mom had no milk. Her siblings were all dead around her, and just a really rough start, a rough catch up. And so she was just this, poor little cute bundle of stress and mess. And so Wilbur was the perfect match for her because he was like the uncle, and he would lay on the bed with her and play with her for hours. And she was talking, then she would kind of like your dog, talking a lot. And they'd play and play, and he'd just wrap his whole body around her and make her feel protected, and he knew just what to do. So I think you just have to kind of learn who your dog is, and it's good to learn who the family is too, because
Right.
if you've got a young child or something that's is a fire element, that's just loves to be social and have fun and super smart and tricks, and yet has this little disturbance of the Shen once in a while, and you get a fire dog, well, they're going to have a blast together. I mean, they're going to be just buddy buddies. And if you have a water element, it's going to kind of keep that fire element tempered. So if you have a water element child that's quiet and thoughtful and still a really fun kid, but deeper, and then you can kind of, if you can pick out a fire dog, then that water element is going to help maintain that fire and keep it down. Yeah, marriages are like that too. So yeah, my husband's a wood, so, and I'm a water by nature, and I shapeshift all the time, of course, for whatever, whenever I need to. But the I sort of feed Mark's wood. So water feeds wood, it helps wood grow. And that's just beautiful. He's an amazing man. He doesn't really need my help, but it's nice to know we are sort of reciprocating, because then what he does is he kind of, when I get flowing too much and I'm just sort of, the river at high levels, you know, then Mark kind of dams me up a little bit, quiets me down, and makes me more of a pool, or a pond, than a flowing river where I'm stretched out so much. So it's interesting, and we talk about that a bit in the books, in a little bit of a different way, and how we can have those relationships with humans as well, and start to understand and utilize each other for a different kind of support, so a different lens of support.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. Okay, know your dog's true nature. It is
mhm.
out today. Congratulations on launch day. This has been
Thank
amazing.
you,
And
thank
not
you.
only get to know yourself, know your dog, know your partner, know your friends. I mean, this is a guide that you can utilize in so many different ways of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on your local bookstores. ElizabethAnnJohnson.com is your website. It's been
Mhm,
scrolling.
mhm.
And I just want to thank you so much for being here today. This has been lovely. And
Yeah.
my dog definitely responded. Like this was the most interactive interview that I've ever had.
Oh, good. When anytime they wanna do a Zoom with me, let me know, and I'll just get hop on, and we'll all talk, so
That's
yeah,
amazing. Well, thank you so
yeah.
much for today. And I
Okay,
really, really, really appreciate it.
great. Thank
Have
you,
a good
Kelly.
day.
Thank you
Oh,
for
yeah,
having me. Was
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
okay.
Attention, curious practitioners in the realm of transformative experiences, holistic wellness, intuitive guidance, and metaphysical arts. Are you ready to expand your